Hello and welcome back to the jewelry box build. This episode is going to be about making the trays. You can see that there's box joint corners in a solid frame and panel bottom. And what we're going to talk about today are the parts of the tray, how it fits in the box, and how to design it so that the buyer can easily get it in and out of the box. This is just a tiny bit snug, but pretty good all in all. The important thing is to cut the parts, the front and back and the side to side, the right length so that the tray can be tipped out one way or another. And I'm going to show that with this other box right now. The critical issue with trays is to not get too tight of a fit. It's about 14.5 inches. And that's about 368 millimeters. And if you cut it snug, it's too snug. But if you cut it about 14 7/16 inches, or about 367 millimeters, then they'll be able to tip the tray out of the box and they'll be more comfortable. So that's about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe, I don't know, 2-3 millimeters. The front to back, because it's a shorter distance, it's 6.25 inches. And if you have it tight, it really starts to hang out. But you have to cut it at like 6 3/32 of an inch, or about 155 millimeters, so that it can swing out. Additionally, you have to be able to cut the finger joints, if I can show that here, in a way that the fingers overlap the side of the other piece. And I do that about a 1/64 of an inch. That is necessary so that it can be sanded flush. If it's a little bit low, then you have to sand the sides down and things start to go out of square. If you can cut the finger joints a 1/64 of an inch longer than the thickness of the parts and sand that down, that compensates for the buildup of varnish over the top of the tray. What we're going to do next is go to the router table and show cutting these finger joints. The router table bit for cutting the finger joints. Each of the slotting cutters is 5/32 of an inch, about 4 millimeters tall, with the spacers in between. And I'm using a Porter Cable model 75182 router. So it's a 3 horsepower router. You can see I have a piece of masonite that I use for backing up the parts so that I don't get tear out on the back, and just a miter gauge with a long fence screwed to it to hold the pieces, the parts, as I cut them. And I'm going to cut some parts now just to show the cutting of it, and then explain what I'm doing about the sides and the fronts and the backs and how they fit together. When I cut the parts, I have, if these are the fronts and backs and this piece is the sides, I have the height of the slotting cutters set so that I can just turn this one over and it fits together so that this top edge, a little bit of burr, but the top edge is flush and so is the bottom edge. The fingers project about a 64th past the edge of the other side, and that's on both sides. What's important is that the front and back pieces get rounded over. So here are the parts for one of the trays. One of the things that needs to be done is that you have to deburr the edges so that they don't get something underneath them and get out of alignment. So with all the pieces deburred, both edges, can make the cuts, and I'll show how the box fits together. So we're back at the bench and I have the pieces here. The slash mark was the upper side. So these are the fronts and the backs. These are the sides. The sides get flipped over and that's how they fit. And they'll fit into the box. Even dry fitted, it fits pretty good. So the next step is to cut the groove for the bottom panel. You can see with these I'm cutting through the end there so that when they align there'll be this notch. This gets plugged after the glue up. I put a little piece in there. And next I'll make up the bottom panel the same way that I made up the bottom panel for the jewelry box and get set up for the glue up. This is a Bridgewood 3 horsepower shaper. It's got 3/4 inch diameter spindle in it with the same profile cutter that I used on the bottom of the jewelry box that I showed in one of the earlier videos. And all we're doing now is testing the cut for the bottom panel of the tray. The next step is to put the round over on the front and back sides of the tray. This is a smaller router table with the half round bit, and that's the front of the tray there. So it gets a nice eased edge, and I'm checking the edge to make sure that it's centered and making a small adjustment, and then going back and routing that shape. we're in the bench room and gluing up the tray in a way similar to how I glued up the boxes. I've put the paraffin wax on the edges of the panel, and now we're going to glue up the finger joints, put it together. I've got a plug to put inside that will help hold it square, clamp it up, and that'll be it. I'm going to try to show you the corners.
And that's it for this
You can
video.
see
Thank you, and see you at the next one, and we'll do the dividers.